Okay guys, so still working on 6.3, example 4. Now we've got completing the square still. But what's different about this problem? This time it's not just an x squared in the front. If you notice, all the other ones we've worked with had x squared to begin with. You cannot have any other number than a 1 in front of the x squared, so we've got to get rid of that 2. How are we going to do that? Well, I can divide by it, but we know what we do to 1, we have to do to all. So divide everything by 2. When you do this, you're going to get x squared plus 12 divided by 2 is 6x minus 5 divided by 2, leave it as a fraction, equals 0 divided by 2 is 0. Don't worry that there's a fraction. We know what to do with it. We'll deal with it when we get there. So now it looks like the others that we've done except the fraction. And so we still just need to get this x squared and this x term by itself. So move that 5 over 2 over. And so I end up with x squared plus 6x, and I'm going to go ahead and put in my blank because I know I'm doing completing the square, equals 0 plus 5 over 2 is 5 over 2, and add in your other blank. Now, let's go ahead and let's solve with that number. I'm going to put the blank in, so remember it's 1/2 times your b terms coefficient equals, get that number, square it, and that's what's going to go into our blanks. So we're going to add a 9 into both of these blanks here. So then we're going to factor this side. What multiplies a 9 that adds to 6? Well, remember I also told you it's always that b over 2. So you get x plus 3 times x plus 3 equals, and then over here again I'm adding with fractions, so I know I've got to get that common denominator. So this 9 is the same as 9 over 1. So what is my common denominator? Well, 2 and 1 both go into 2. So I know my common denominator is going to be a 2. This 2 I multiplied by 1, so the 5 times 1 is 5. The 1 I multiplied by 2, so the 9 times 2 is 18. So when I go to rewrite this, I get my x plus 3 squared equals 5 halves plus 18 halves. Remember, add your coefficients, so 23 over your common denominator of 2. Then we got to get rid of that square, so let's take the square root of both sides. And so you get x plus 3 equals plus or minus, well, take the square root of them individually, just like we did in the previous video. But the square root of 2 and the square root of 23, neither one of those will break down. But can you have a radical on bottom? Of course not. So let's deal with that before we even worry about solving with x. And how do we get rid of the radical on bottom? Well, it's the square root of 2, so I need to multiply it by a square root of 2. And what you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So when I rewrite this, I still got that x plus 3 equals plus or minus. But remember, you multiply fractions straight across, so you get the square root of 46 over square root of 2 times square root of 2 is just 2. Can you break down the 46? Yes, you can. 46 is 23 times 2, but both of those are prime. Therefore, you can't go any further, so you can't take anything out. So now that we've got our fraction simplified, I'm going to come up here, I'm going to rewrite it, and then we need to finish solving it. So we have x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 46 all over 2. So you need to get that x by itself, so move the 3. And so we get x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 46 all over 2. That's definitely acceptable as an answer, but what if we need to have it as one fraction? So remember, again, to get it as one fraction, you have to have a common denominator. So this negative 3 is over 1. So I'm going to go ahead and work to get that common denominator. Again, I can just multiply my denominators, if nothing else, since they're just numbers, and I get 2 as my common denominator. Well, this 1 was times 2, so the negative 3 is times 2, so we get negative 6 in our numerator. This 2 here was times 1, so I multiply the square root of 46 times 1, which leaves me with the square root of 46. And that should be plus or minus there, not just plus, because it was plus or minus up above. So then remember, combine your numerators over your common denominator. So x equals negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 46 all over 2. Either one of these solutions is definitely acceptable. I would take either one of them. Hope this helps.